Hey,
So you're one of my favorite bosses.
one out of many, I hope.
I've always tried to strike this dynamic by having people that might be under me when it comes to my profession, but can also be great friends. It's been really hard to pull it off. I feel like you've pulled that off with so many of your friends.
Hmm.
How did you do that?
Well, I think you just need to work with really talented people who you really respect, who may be at that point in life are in the dynamic where they're working for you, but you see them very much as peers and really truly respect how they move through life and the work that they do.
So, can you imagine if you're running a team of 20 something year olds right now at your
Yeah.
age that you could have still pulled it off? Or do you think age had anything to do with it as well?
I think I would do it very differently now because I'm older, clearly. I think running a team of 20 people in your late 20s, early 30s who were also a very similar age to you, it was just a totally different dynamic, right? And so I think that all of our team really felt like peers to one another. And sure, at the end of the day, one person was maybe may have been ultimately responsible, right, and making some of the tougher decisions. But in the end, but we were all very much working as a team, and clearly there were some boundaries I had to have, but mainly it was a much more flat level surface. Whereas if I was running a team of 20-year-olds now, I think it would be a different dynamic. I would like to have the same dynamic, but I think it would be impossible to recreate the same thing again.
What were those boundaries for you?
Trying to give people advice in their personal life, I think, was one thing that I felt very uncomfortable doing, or trying to adjudicate personal relationships between people on the team, whether it was an argument or if it was on a work sense, sure, but if it was on a personal relationship, I felt like I could not be the one to do that given the position I was in.
So, most people that know me know about you because I talk about UNICEF Innovation a
It
lot.
was a big part of our lives.
It's a very big part
Yeah.
of our lives. Within that bandit, what role did you see yourself playing? How did you see yourself?
Within the team
Yeah.
and the large organization, I felt my role was a couple things. One was to go out and sell the work that the team was doing and get support from it, whether it was financial or political support. Also to create protection for the team so they could do their work without the interference of the usual bureaucratic nonsense or political stuff, because people were really jealous of the work that we were doing. So I really felt very protective of it. And I think the other role is to lift people up who were doing really good work so they could take the next step in their careers or be exposed to more opportunities than they currently were.
I think protection, I'm starting to realize as well, is a very important part of what a leader does. In your case, did you feel there was gratitude given for that fairly selfless?
I think most people who we worked with didn't want to have to deal with the messy bureaucracy around us because, frankly, it's a pain. Some people get off on it, but most people, I'd say, don't. And so they were grateful that I would be the one to have to handle that. And they'd often come to me and be like, listen, I can't do this. And so I'd have to step in. So I think most people were very happy to do it. And some people wanted to deal with it, and then I'd let them, but always keep an eye on it because I just knew how nasty some outsiders could be.
I think I was one of those who wanted to do it. I just
Yeah,
had my
you were good
hand
at it.
burned. Well, had my hand burned enough to have therapy session with you. Can you give us a story of a time where you had to do that and you were just like, I wish I didn't have to do it? Where you just hated that part of the job?
So the thing that I think I probably spend the most of my time on, and the part that I despise, was contracting. Whether it was a company or an individual having to go through the procurement, the interviews were fine, and the defense of how a square box couldn't fit into a round hole. Well, we'd have to try to make it fit. So let's see if I can think of it. We had to try to contract a company to build this SMS system that we were doing. And we had worked with a bunch of them before, and we knew deep down there was really only one company and that was going to be able to deliver in the time that we had and for the money that we had. And so I had to sit there and basically create a rationale that fit the UN system procurement process to do this, when I literally should have just had to write the document saying, this is literally the only company that can do it, but that wasn't enough. So I had to spend a lot of time doing that. And that's when I hated my role. But I didn't make anyone else do it.
How long did you spend on it?
Months. I don't know. I'd say back and forth over a period of 4 or 5 months.
Do you, for people who especially knew you then, you had a rock star kind of persona because you were just named with Chris on the Time 100, right?
And there I was doing my bureaucracy.
Do you feel people ever understood that the banality of awesomeness had a lot to do with just
Getting through those contracts.
Yeah. I'm just curious. How were your conversations?
The way to be successful in a large organization, UNICEF, or I think any large organization, is sure, you have to have good ideas, you have to have good execution, and you have to see the opportunities and put things together. But at the end of the day, if you aren't moving the organization along with you, it won't work. And so I'd say my main role and the reason that we were successful was because of trying to put these things into place in the organization. And most of that was honestly awful, boring work. I got very familiar with contracting processes and things like that.
What part of your work made that side worth it? Were there certain things that you fed off that made you feel rewarded?
Yeah. So for sure, what was happening at the country level and seeing the projects that we put into motion working in the country, that by far, that was the number one thing. I'd say the second thing was the team. Working with such a group of amazingly talented, motivated, fun people. That's incredible. You can't wish for anything more than that. And then I think the third thing was trying to bring some culture change within the organization so they could move beyond what their notion of how work should be done and technology should be used. And seeing that change over the time I was there, which obviously wasn't just me. The whole world was changing with technology. But
maybe you can answer this in two parts. But you talk a lot about people and how awesome these people were.
it's all about the people.
But
It's all about the people.
They didn't parachute on your lap. You had to recruit. So I'm just curious, what was your methodology, or what was your approach to identifying people that are not just talented, but also had that good energy that's required to have incredible teams?
Well, we didn't recruit just from inside. We recruited heavily from outside. And we also took people who were really early in their careers, so who could go and have gotten a much more lucrative job, especially later on in life, but were young and wanted to do something fun and interesting and have a bit of an adventure and travel. And so we had people straight out of college sometimes, and they'd stay with us. And I never expected them to stay for that long. I felt like they'd stay, learn a lot, have a great time, work hard, and then move on. And so I feel like we were constantly in a recruitment process. We weren't like, oh, the team's set. It was just everyone was moving through for a couple of years, maybe even just a year, and then they'd move on to their next thing. And we took people with sometimes adjacent experience. So it wasn't like, oh, you need to be an expert in this particular thing. If I saw that you had done something really interesting in a different field, but you had some of the characteristics of just getting things done, being really creative, trying to find different workarounds for problems, and doing it in a sort of a humble way, then I prized that much more than, yes, I worked 2 years in this same discipline, because we were building the discipline at that time, right, that we were in. It wasn't something that was existed or established. So, and more than anything, it was a feeling of, does this person have the right attitude?
What is the right attitude? How do you gauge that?
It's sort of, we can do this, we can do it together. If I have a problem and I don't know something, I want to learn how to do it better. And I may be scared, but it's okay, and we'll try something together. And it's also like we over me. So I actually, we definitely had a couple people on the team that were very much me over, and some of them were brilliant, absolutely brilliant. But I would say they were not a great addition to the team because they were just looking over them for themselves versus the good of the project or the good of the team. And they usually pass it pretty quickly.
We over me, so much I can relate to. You mentioned the country level. So for many people, they have never experienced what it means to do the type of work that people at UNICEF or broader UN do when they go on mission, especially when they go to field offices. Maybe in very layman terms, can you explain to me the general feeling that you would have when you go to a place, I don't know, Malawi or Afghanistan? Just what was that thing that really would etch in your memory once leaving?
So I think when you leave the capital of a country, which is usually pretty built up and all that, and you go to where, for example, UNICEF had projects which were usually pretty rural, remote areas, usually the poorer part of the country. And people don't have a lot in terms of monetary goods or opportunities. And I think delivering or trying to work with them to have better opportunities, whether it's in terms of how their health is going to be or education, and seeing improvement where girls couldn't go to school, now they can, or their test results come in faster from their medical things, or it puts the fire in you because you realize that, shit, we have so much. Life really isn't fair. It's the circumstances of where you were born, and everyone deserves the opportunity to live a better life. And so seeing that in action and just sort of having it, even if you see it so many times, every time it still hits you in the face, like, God, everyone's a person, and most people really deserve better than they have.
Just one last thing around UNICEF world. I think one thing that I always struggled with was doing the type of work that we did meant that we do it with an expiration date so that someone else takes over, right? And especially when working with countries, it does give others the sensation or the perception that we just parachute in with some kind of a god complex and then we parachute out.
That's a problem.
Which is which could be a problem. But how did you see it? What did you really feel that you were there to do that can debunk that stereotype?
So in the UN and UNICEF, people are moving around all the time. The national staff often will stay. So if you're a national of that country and you work in the office, you'll stay. But even the international staff, they're there for 2 years, 3 years tops, and then so there definitely is a revolving door. And I think there's some really good things with that because ideas stay fresh. People don't get too wedded to their project or their way of thinking. But I also think it's not great because there isn't a lot of continuity. And it's sort of puts the two levels of the boss is the international. And that international could be from anywhere, right? And then there's the national staff, and there's two levels when these national staff actually usually have a tremendous amount of knowledge and experience with it. So I think the rotation is good, but I don't like the dichotomy of national and international staff. And I think it's an outdated sort of way of thinking of things, unless you're in North Korea and then your national staff is just like the crazy government. But most countries. The question was, like, what's...
I think you actually answered it. I was just going to come to the follow-up around it, though.
So I felt very uncomfortable, and I think the thing I was there to do was help them set up something that they felt would make their program better, right? So I was there literally to make the right connections, provide some technical expertise, help them set up a team to do it, and then leave them do it, and then share the knowledge that the work that they had done with other places. Feel like that was really my role.
Do you feel that model works? Especially the broader concept of innovation and trying to change ways of working. You have struggled with, heart is really to save people, but really the work that needs to be done is help an institution that will...
With their contracts?
Yeah, we're 3 people removed.
Oh, for sure.
It might be necessary. I'm just curious, if Idus today was just starting off at UNICEF in your team, he come in because he wants to save even kids from whatever, but he's an insanely great software developer, and there's this thing that he can build that can make the country office of Ethiopia better. How would you advise him around? Because I feel there's a lot of talented people today who still want to join the UN, but come out jaded because what they thought they would do, what they needed to do was very different.
I think setting reality, I think, is, if I had to do it again, I think the thing that I would do to the new hire is, instead of just tell them about the project that they're working on that they've been hired to do, I'll be like it out and how it fits in with a larger thing, and the sort of like we as a team think things change over time for people, and what our role in it is, or what the hypothesis of the organization is as well, or the country office. And so just lay out like this is how we're working, this is the way we think about things, this is our theory of change essentially, and this is how you fit in it, and like this is why it's important. Like you see that. I think I probably would have done that more. I think that would have been useful to people, and then people can decide like, okay, part of that, something I want to be doing, and I want to be part of that, or this is not how I want to contribute, or
Rip the band-aid faster.
yeah.
What's your fondest memory of UNICEF? Is there like particular 5-10 second that you can every time you think about it, like good times at UNICEF?
I mean, it has to be like our times with Sharad and the team. Like me screaming at me, the team all around being like, what the fuck's going on? And then we realize we're in violent agreement.
You had a way of getting out emotions and passion from people, right? Do you feel there are more charads in this world? And where do we find them?
Very few and far between. I also think he's a good man, but like he's so unconcerned with like, I don't mean it like a weird way, but like so concerned with like HR violations that lives over everyone's shoulder these days, right? He's like, I'm gonna do the right thing, and I'm going to. He wasn't always just about covering his own ass. He went out on a limb for people, and I really learned that, and that made me. I feel the same way, and I'm like saying commit HR violation at all, clearly.
Just do the right thing.
But you also have to do the right thing by people, not just, yeah.
Agree more. I think when I met you, you were just starting a family.
Yeah, I guess so.
Right?
Yeah. I was pregnant, I think, yeah.
Yeah, a few months later, I saw baby Atlas.
Yeah.
What was it like? And there's no intention around
Yeah.
a specific response here, but I think it's been asked many times, especially from young female motivated professionals who have this fear about starting a high-flying career because they see what the demand around that is. And they make that binary kind of decision, it's either family or not. And without responding to that, what was your experience like? What was your thought process then? And what is your reflection?
Yeah. So, well, I can tell you my thought process, but I should probably explain my situation first. So, the guy I decided I wanted to start a family with is a tech entrepreneur, and he really didn't want to leave the Bay Area, so that's why we're here. And I decided that I wanted to be with him, even if that would change the trajectory of my career. So that's a decision that I made willingly, but it was a pretty big sacrifice. So I made it work for a while here. I understood that I would not be moving around. And when you work for the UN, moving around is part of the job. So I knew that like path would probably diverge from the UN at some point. Honestly, I was tired. Like I've been doing this for over a decade, UNICEF Innovation, and before that I was working for the UN as well, even before UNICEF Innovation. And I was tired and I wanted to do something different. So I was, was okay. Maybe a little sooner than I would have liked, but okay. So I feel like if you're willing to move around, it's great. I grew up as a UN kid and I moved around a lot. I loved it. It's made me who I am. I think it was like best upbringing I could have had. It was great. Then it's hard to be a couple because how do you move to the same place and the same job if you have a partner? So I think it worked when there was sort of person in the family who worked and the other person took care of the family. But I don't think it works very well anymore. I decided that I wanted to have a family, so I decided to stay put. But I could have seen my life take a different direction in the way I grew up. From country to country, your kids move with you. They get a new experience, a new cultural experience, a new language experience every time they move, right? Which makes them into like, you see more parts of the world, and I feel like it really builds empathy in people to like put out of their comfort zone, see something very different from what they're used to.
But I feel like you found a passion and a talent that you would have never had if you did that, which is making shirts. So I would love to hear
Yeah.
about that
So one of
journey.
the things that I really missed, so being a manager, you do the contracting and the politics and the management of people, but you stop doing the work of the everyday, right? And I really like the work of the everyday. I like being creative. I like building things. And then I guess I found out during the pandemic that I really like creating things with my hands. So I really missed that part as a manager because I wasn't doing a lot of that. And I still was able to keep my hand in some things, but not enough. And so I also made a conscious decision that I wanted to do, I didn't feel like my joy in life is to be managing 400 people, 500 people, 1,000 people. That was not going to be my joy in life. My joy in life was going to be a little more selfish and create things by myself and be here for my family. And so it took me a while to come to that realization because I had to let go all of the, I guess, expectations of how others viewed me and how I viewed myself as someone who was successful and was on a career path. But once I did that, I'm actually pretty happy.
What made you say fuck it when it comes to what people think? What was there? I'm sure it wasn't.
Yeah.
I'm sure it wasn't a moment. It was a process.
It was definitely a process.
But how would you summarize that process to people?
Honestly,
Because
it's been very
I'm sure a lot of
hard. It was very difficult for me. And I think that I've always cared what people think of me. Not like I want to please them, I'm not a people pleaser at all, but I want to be respected. And I think a lot of the respect that people had to me were tied up with my career and what I'd done. And so I had to get okay in my head of being able to let that go and realize that the thing I actually care more about is my close friends, a small group of friends, family, and I don't actually need the external validation. I really don't. Some people do. But I realize I actually don't. And so it was just I had to let go of that part of me.
how did you view happiness in your late 20s, early 30s versus now? What moves the needle around your happiness barometer now?
I think in my late 20s and 30s, it was about exciting new experiences that seemed out of reach. So it's like, oh my gosh, I can't believe I got to meet this famous person. We had a great conversation, or I went to this really great Michelin star restaurant, or whatever, right? I'm trying to think back on it.
So could relate.
And what makes me happy now, which has always been true, it hasn't changed, but I like spending time with the people I know and in small groups and eating and drinking and just having those small moments of laughter and joy. That's really what makes me happy. And that's why I cook dinner for my friends a lot. Wow. I've always done that, but that's that I really see that now.
You're valuing it. Do you think that'll change over time? Especially when you see your parents
Yeah.
and maybe they had that moment.
So one of the things that I see, and my kids are getting a little older, so I'm able to do it more, but one of the things I really missed when I first had kids was the ability to go out and do adventure by myself. And now I can, especially my eldest, I can start bringing him along, right? So I think I'll do that much more. And I see my parent, especially my mom, do that. We hiked the haute route from Chamonix to Zermatt, and I couldn't have done that with a 3-year-old, but I did it with a 9-year-old, right? And I'm more and more backcountry skiing, outdoor adventures. That's the thing that I think I will do more of as in the future because I won't be as tied to small children. I think that'll change.
Where does the thirst for outdoor adventure come from? Is it your parents? Because both of them seem very much outdoorsy.
Definitely both of my parents, and also growing up in Switzerland, I skied a lot, I hiked a lot, did some mountaineering. My whole family really enjoys being in the outdoors, especially mountains. So
I think very few people know that you were born in Afghanistan.
I wasn't. I was born in Japan. My sister was born in
Your
Afghanistan.
sister,
Yeah.
did you live in Afghanistan?
I lived there from 1982 to 1985.
Kind of comes back to something that you mentioned earlier around experiences that you could have given your kids.
I was set up for it.
It ultimately means being a third culture kid. And you'd be very surprised how many people are third culture kids, especially within the Ethiopian community.
I'm sure. Or at least the circles you move in.
The circles that you
Yeah.
move. What was that like for you? What were the advantages that you got out of it? What are the things that you felt was just a crutch, especially as you started to take on life of your own?
So I think mainly advantages, for sure. I think that the biggest skill you can have in your career or even in your personal life is understanding people and seeing what makes them tick. And because at the end of the day, you work with people, right? And even as we move into the future with AI and we have no idea what work's going to look like, what anything is going to be like, should our kids even go to college? I don't know. But I do think that working with people and creating things together with people is never going to go away. And I think as a third culture kid, when you're exposed to so many different types of people, that gives you a distinct advantage. And you don't bring your preconceived notions of basically limitation, because you're only exposed to one thing, with you. That's out of the way already. And I think that's, I mean, it's given you a huge advantage, I know, and other kids who grew up the way we did. Crutch. Never really feeling at home anywhere, I think is the, and it's never really bothered me though. Home is wherever I am. But I don't feel emotionally linked to a place or have that nationalist identity in me. You were talking about your dad and he feels very strongly about Ethiopia. I don't really feel very strongly about anywhere. There's good and bad things, right? But I like to take, so for example, my American identity. I mean, I hate what's happening in the country now, but the thing that I think is so valuable about my American identity is this entrepreneurial spirit, not being held back by where your parents came from, the school that you went to. Just go out and do it, right? I think that is such a valuable thing that I love about the American identity. Many other things I hate. The thing I love about my Japanese identity is the idea of doing a job really well and really getting good at it and taking pride in it. That is, I love that. But then the conformism and the monoculture, I hate that of Japan. So take it or leave it, right?
Especially as a teenager, or I'm sure probably needed some kind of validation from your social circles. Did you ever feel like an outsider?
Well, I always went to international schools, so we were all outsiders, right? And from many, especially in Burma, I'd say I had a class of 10. My entire grade was 10 people. It was a very small school. So the whole school was fewer than 100 kids, right? And people were from everywhere and moving through very quickly, only 2 years and everyone would move. So there, everyone was an outsider. I think the first time I felt like an outsider was when I moved to Switzerland. And I went to an international school there. I'm sure there were people from all over the world, but it was very much a dominant European cultural norm, which I was not used to at all. And so with everything from, oh, your food's weird, to ideas of beauty and whiteness and those kind of standards, right? So that was the first time I was exposed to it. But I had enough otherness in some of the student body, so it was okay. But I remember thinking like, oh, that's a thing.
I could see that. Well, just shifting gears a little bit. Earlier you mentioned AI. It's something that really unsettles me.
It's unsettling.
It's a very unsettling thing. And you happen to be married to someone who's very close to that world.
To the AI, yes.
Right?
Yes.
And
it's his career and his past and his hobby, yes.
Exactly. and I'll be talking to him about that as well. But from your perspective, kind of the pseudo insider knowledge that you have around it, what would you say are the top 2 to 5, pick your poison, 2 to 5 things that a teenager should be preparing themselves with?
I feel pretty strongly that teenagers should not have relationships with AIs. And it's hard to use it and have the benefit of it without having that relationship. When I use ChatGPT, stop being so fucking obsequious, right? But other people really like that. But I feel like, so the way I heard Scott Galloway describe this, which I think is pretty spot on, is we need to be putting a lot of friction into our relationships when we're kids. People are gonna not want to be your friend, or maybe you have a love interest and they're gonna turn you down, and relationships are messy, and people are not always gonna be pleasing. And if you have a kid who has a relationship with an AI, it's frictionless. And so they develop the idea that it should be that way. And as soon as they go out into the outside world, it's going to be too difficult because people are difficult, right? And so if you can't, having a relationship with an AI is a life without adversity, right? Or a relationship without adversity. And I think that kids will not be able to function well in the real world with other people and other humans if their main experience of relationships is with an AI.
Just on that though, what does it mean to develop a relationship or to have a relationship with AI? You mean don't use it at all?
So the way I use it,
mean?
I would say, so one of the way I use these agentic things is I don't have a relationship. Perform a task for me, or I have a question about something that I could look up and spend a long time looking up, but you can look it up very quickly for me. Thank you, we're done. Right? That's how I use it. But more and more I hear about people who, let's say it starts with, I want to develop a PowerPoint about something, right? Or whatever, right? I want some task. And more, well, what do you think? Do you think this is good? So then it's starting the validation process. And it snowballs from there, is what a lot of people who are close to me have gone through this process, especially younger adults. And so I think it easily moves into a personal relationship of sorts where you're being provided validation. Or I'm sure you have heard this, there's a New York Times article like a couple days ago about basically it's like psychosis I think it's called, where both the AI and you believe that you have discovered something completely novel. So like this one guy who was really believed that he had invented a new form of math, which sounds insane, right? But he had gone through this process through months and months and months of developing this relationship with this AI. And so when you think about, you come to this conclusion. So if you think about that with kids, like just not ready for it, right? To deal with that. So that's how I think about kids and AI. They should not use it, but I don't know. I want them to use it for the great reasons that you use it, but I don't want them to have relationships with it. So I don't know how you safeguard that.
Most of the people that are going to listen to you on this in their 20s and 30s, most probably in Ethiopia, professionals.
Yeah.
What advice would you give them?
Okay, I actually have like a couple of things that are not from me. There are things that I have heard, whether it's from my dad or Shara, and I see them playing out again and again, and they go against my better instincts, but I think they ring true. And I think the first one that my dad told me time ago, probably when I first started working, was if you can't kill them, don't fight them. And what that really means is like, this person is no longer going to be an obstacle for you and they're going to continue to survive. You will only be hurting yourself in the process because you will be expending all of your energy to try to fight this person. But if the outcome isn't they are no longer there working with you, you've just spent all this energy for nothing, and you may be receiving negative energy back from them. So that goes against all of my instincts because I just feel so strongly about justice and doing the right thing. So that's one thing that I've had to learn the hard way many times.
Can you tell me one of those moments where you had to learn it the hard way?
Sure. So I used to have a boss, probably shouldn't say her name, but picked her favorites, and I didn't like the way she picked favorites, and she was pretty capricious about things, and I felt like she didn't do the right thing. But she was many levels above me, and I shouldn't have fought her because I should have just tried to stay out of her way. But I didn't, and so I fought her. I'm like mouthing her. I'm bad mouthing her now, but I'm more like, I was like, I disagree with this. This is why. I put so much energy and work into to prove her wrong, essentially, right? And like, I couldn't get rid of her. Like, crazy.
But
It sucked a lot of time and energy from me. Yeah.
I think everyone has that person.
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
I think it's also the mental space that that person takes up in your day.
Yeah, took up way too much time of my time. I could have been doing something else. Yeah.
The thing my dad would always say about specific around work is it's serious, but it's not that serious.
Yeah.
Serious is work for you now.
Yeah, it's not that serious. Do it, and I really enjoy doing it, and I have other priorities in my life as well. Yeah. Whereas before, like, whole priority was work. Yeah.
I think we brushed through shirt business. A lot of people are probably going to be interested, curious
Yeah.
how you landed there.
Yeah.
Can you just walk us
Sure.
through that a bit?
So I started sewing and quilting during the pandemic, and I had a ferocious passion for it. I just like stopped to the point where like my family owns a quilt now. My mom was like, "Are you okay?" I'm like, "Not okay. It's the pandemic." um, then I really started getting into custom fitting and tailoring. So I was like, there has to be a better way than the 300-step process to build a 2D model of what is like paper of a person's body. So I worked with my husband, my code monkey, to build the software that could basically take people's measurements and create a pattern for their body. And I decided to do men's shirting because I felt like there was a hole in the market there. There's so many women's clothes out there. Men's shirting is not something that, like, style doesn't really change dramatically over time. A shirt today could have been a shirt 10 years ago, 20 years from now. I just felt like it was a space that existed in the market, like not that many fun men's shirts out there. There's a lot of young men, or men in general, in the Bay Area with a lot of disposable income. So they don't mind dropping. And they're also probably, like, let's say they get to be there in their 30s and 40s and they realize, like, I don't want to wear a hoodie anymore. Like, I realized it was cool in my 20s, but it's just not cool anymore. So they need a little upgrade.
Is there a specific type of shirt that you've just been obsessed in making more of? Is there something?
So what the thing that I'm finding is it's really hard to get people measured. And people like, oh, well, I'm not the weight I want to be right now, or I want to lose. It's usually I want to lose weight, or I want to change myself before I go down this road. So also, like, with my time, like, to measure someone, their measurements is like, and people measuring themselves, like, actually very difficult to. You can't measure yourself, and there's a skill to it. So that barrier is actually leading me to I'm going to start offering standard sizes as well, because just like that friction of, like, to get to the point where you actually measured, etc., is so high. So I am in the process now of trying to figure that out.
Why do men love shirts? Like, what have you seen?
Because it's a relatively easy way to look somewhat put together. And it's not crazy. Shirt fabric can be crazy, but, like, who knows what a shirt is, right? And it just looks, if you're, like, in shape and look, like, a t-shirt is what you look amazing in. But if you're not, like, epitome of our beauty standards, then a slightly more tailored looks better on you. Yeah.
I ask everyone what your favorite. So I ask everyone what your favorite book is, or a book that has been on your mind a lot,
Let's see. A book that's been on my mind a lot.
or a podcast. I know you're a podcast.
I'm a crazy podcast lady. So I'll tell you a podcast I listened to last year, which I keep thinking about. It's actually a podcast that Anderson Cooper did about grief. And he interviewed various people to talk about grief. And I haven't had a lot of grief from losing people very close to me in my life, but a little bit, but not in the same way. I haven't lost my parents or a very close friend. But it's something that I know people carry so deeply in them. And so it's just really interesting to see it being explored. And there's a lot of crying in that podcast. It's very heartfelt. And so I've just been thinking, it's been knocking about in my brain for a while, because we will all experience it, right?
It's been on my mind as well, especially with parents aging. Do you feel you could ever be prepared for it?
I think you could be more prepared than having it hit you out of nowhere. I think one of the ways to be prepared for it is just not beating yourself up for not getting it over it sooner, and for not feeling like you need to go back to the way you were before. Is that you will, understanding that you will be irrevocably changed, and it'll always be with you, and it'll be something that will change who you are, essentially, and being okay with that in advance.
It's I'll feel very awkward if we ended this on grief. Maybe I'll just ask something very counter to end this. What keeps you optimistic about people? Because I think you're a person that you're very deep.
Am I?
I think you're very underrated when it comes to the depth that you have around people. Because every time that we meet, even the way that you ask me of how I'm doing, there's an element of depth that's very unique.
I don't really like the surface relationship stuff. Not my
It's not your thing. And I think that's why we've stuck around as friends as well. Right? What keeps you optimistic about people? Because I think we're in a weird time where a lot of people are losing faith in people. What keeps you optimistic?
About people in general, or
In general.
well, when it comes down to it, we're all just people, right? Doesn't matter who you are, you're just a person. I think that, and if you look back, people have done some incredible things, whether it's new scientific discoveries, building the pyramids, whatever, right? People have done incredible things, or just small acts of kindness, right? That were totally selfless. And so I think the thing that's changed in the way I look at people is we're living through a period now, which I think is a pretty dark period, and hopefully something new will be born out of it. But instead of trying to think about it in decades or 5 years or 2 years, I'm starting to think of it more in a longer time horizon. And because people have done such incredible things, I think that people will continue to do such incredible things, and we will come out of this dark period into something new, hopefully. But this is not a 2-year fix or a 5-year fix. It's much longer.
You're awesome. Thank you so much for this time.
You're very welcome. I hope it was okay.
It's not unpretentious. There is one thing I'll